Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Natural Resource Board regular meeting for Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. If we could, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Janet, can we have roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Ware,
Present.
Mr. Billman, or Ms. Billman, I'm sorry.
Present.
Mr. Clifford, Mr. Kraus, Mr. Dovell. Present. Ms. Dr. Mosblick on Zoom.
I do not yet have her in attending.
Okay. Mr. Stadelman,
I am here. Thank you.
Mr. Carano,
Present.
Mr. Brugan. Present. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thanks for everybody being here and taking your time out to support Sebastian. If we can, item number 4 is an approval of minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look over the minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the June 4th, 2024 meeting.
I'll second that motion. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Can we get a voice vote of aye to approve the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Approval of minutes is passed. Item number 5, announcements. We'd like to welcome our new board members. If Ms. Gordian.
Right. So in the past month, Mr. Paul Dovell was appointed to the board as our newest alternative board member. And if you'd like to, you can come to the podium and just introduce yourself to the board.
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Mr. Dovell.
Thank you. So I have been a resident of Sebastian for a little over 4 years now. I absolutely adore. This is just a great place to live. I'm very passionate about protecting the environment in this area and in general, but I'm very happy to be appointed here, and I'm looking forward to this new adventure. So thank you all very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Dovell. Does anybody have any questions for him? Well, thank you for being here tonight. Is there anybody else new tonight? All right, great. Woo. That means we do have a full board, though, right?
That's correct. Now we actually have all 7 regular members and the 2 alternates.
That's a lot of brain power we could bring to just about any issue that you could think of, as well as city staff and everybody else that's included. Okay, moving on from there. Again, Mr. Duvall, thank you for your service to Sebastian. Looking at item 6, agenda modifications. Not seeing any. Does anybody have any? Okay, we'll move on to item 7, public input. Is there any public input tonight? Is there anybody on Zoom?
Nobody's raised their hand at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to item 8, new business. And the item on new business is item A, board training. And we have our attorney, city attorney here, Ms. Cockcraft. Cockcraft. I apologize.
That's okay.
I'm sure you've had to deal with that over the years.
No worries.
And I apologize for the last couple of meetings if I had to not say your name right or refer to you properly. But we're ready for your training.
Great, thank you. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Jennifer Cockcroft. I'm the city attorney for the city of Sebastian. As such, I represent the city council and also the city citizen advisory boards. We are having some feedback. The city council asked that I talk to some of the advisory boards to give you some brief updates on some changes that we've made, and also just a brief review on ethics and the law in the state of Florida and your role on the Citizen Advisory Board here, the Natural Resources Board. So before we get to that training, just briefly, you are a Category 2 board of the City of Sebastian. That means you're fact-finding and advisory only. You do not implement policies. You are limited to what the City Council has charged you with under their code, which includes your preservation and enhancement, regulatory programs, and public assets management. your scope should be limited to those, and not implementing policies beyond those. So going further, you all should have been given a citizen advisory handbook. That will outline some of those matters. You're subject to, certain ethics and rules in your role as representing the city council in these matters. And I'm sure you all understand the importance of that, and also the obligations to the public as a public official, essentially. So with going further, as a board, we've had, a few hiccups here and there with different advisory boards following procedures and things of that nature. So basically, all citizen advisory boards will follow Robert's Rules of Order as a basic rule of parliamentary procedure. Some boards tend to forget that when you elect your chair, it should be by nomination, not motion, and that's something to keep in mind each year when you elect your chair. I'll hit some other hot topics, but basically, Robert's Rules of Order will guide most of your meetings. You'll have an agenda, and you'll follow those rules with respect to motions, and staff can help you if you get tripped up in some of that. So as we know, we do have public comment, and you had that. Citizen advisory input via Zoom, City Council, I believe, has eliminated that. So you aren't quasi-judicial, so you don't have to deal with those things, but you are having some changes with respect to alternates. You don't have them on the dais, which is appropriate. Some other boards did have the alternates up on the dais, which was not appropriate and has been changed. The other changes they've made are with respect to time limits for applicants, but those things won't generally affect you unless you go on to serve on a different board. So that being said, anybody have any questions on that type of stuff procedurally? Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Ware?
I have a question is, if they're not sitting up here, does that apply when we need them?
No,
Because-
ma'am. If a regular member is absent, then the alternate would step into the place of the regular member.
Up here.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And there are the attendance requirements with respect to the board members being subject to removal, but generally, almost any reason would be, a valid reason for somebody if they can't make it, and, we wouldn't expect that an alternate would really have to be here all the time if we don't need them, so it's their choice. And the other thing to keep in mind is that you are a public body. You act only as a group. Your single members don't have the authority to go out unless authorized by the collective body. You shouldn't speak to another body, whether it be city council or a regional agency, unless this board collectively or the city council as a whole, you act as a body, not as a member. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay. So that being said, I'm going to move into ethics and law. This stuff is most likely things you've been exposed to multiple times in the past, but we'll go over it. Florida Citizen Advisory Boards are subject to the rules contained in the Florida statutes as well as the Florida State Constitution. Those are laid out, and as you see above. I have this PowerPoint available to everybody. If you don't have it, I can send it to you or have staff get you copies. But it's pretty basic out of the statutes. So we have our code of ethics that applies to all citizens advisory boards and city councils, commissions, boards, public records law, sunshine law, and then quasi-judicial versus quasi-legislative. So you're not a quasi-judicial board. You're fact-finding only, so we won't go into that. We'll talk about quasi-legislative. So why do we have code of ethics? We could name names, but we won't. We want our public officials to act in the best interest of the community as a whole. We want you to be independent. We want you to be impartial. We don't want you to use your office for private gain. We know you're volunteers and we appreciate you very much, but we also have to realize that there's implications if misconduct should occur. These could include criminal penalties, removal from office, a public reprimand, and potentially a civil fine of up to $10,000. So, always err on the side of caution. We don't ask for or accept gifts. If you do come into that situation, please contact staff immediately. There's certain reporting obligations with respect to gifts, and it's just best to not do that kind of thing. These are the things that would potentially trip you up. We don't generally enter into contracts with people that are on our boards, your agency. You shouldn't be accepting money for your vote. You shouldn't be misusing your positions. These are all like kindergarten rules. I think everybody just do the right thing. I mean, we don't want people in dual offices because, you know, that will put you in a conflict potentially, like two masters. We don't want you employing your relatives. These are all, you know, pretty basic. So like I mentioned, if someone tries to give you a gift with respect to your public office, tries to send you on a trip and pay for it, we want to avoid those types of things. So make sure that you're disclosing anything that's potentially not up and up. So those can include campaign contributions potentially, honoraria, which is if someone offers to give you money to speak somewhere and pay you for it, that's what's called honoraria. That's number 2. Next one. There we go. So every board member will be filing their annual reporting. If your Form 6 was subject to challenge, some officers are required to file Form 1. I'm not sure what y'all file, but Jeanette will get you whatever it is that you would have to file, if any. Yeah, I think since you're fact-finding only, you wouldn't have to file that. So prohibited gifts are going to be anything over $100 from a lobbyist or a PAC or a CCE, or any gift ever given to influence a vote. And I'm sure none of you would ever do that, but we wouldn't, you know, that wouldn't be appropriate. So basically, you would have to declare anything over $25, and from a lobbyist or a PAC or a CCE would be anything over $100. So again, if anything like that happened, come to staff. We can guide you. We've, you know, been doing this a bit. So the honorary law is contained in 112.3.149. We skipped ahead a little bit. So this wouldn't affect you if you were already employed. Say, for example, you were employed by a very large waste management company, pre-existing. So that wouldn't come into play unless you were doing some behind-the-scenes things, and that would be a whole different topic. So it doesn't include ordinary payment or salary related to your public duties. It doesn't include campaign contributions generally, but there's always those situations where you want to be careful. So again, use staff, we're your resource. Conflict of interest. So we want everybody to be fair and impartial when you're making your decisions on behalf of the board or your advisory decisions. When you make your recommendations, we want to make sure that those are for and in the public interest and not to the benefit of you or your personal financial interests. So that being said, whenever you're present and making a recommendation to your board on behalf of your board, you should always be voting. And the only time when you would not be voting is if you have a personal financial pecuniary interest, it's called. So anything that specifically affects your bank account, essentially. So if that comes into play, then you would disclose the conflict and fill out the form. But that's generally on the decision-making bodies. It would generally apply here too often. The other time that would come up, and these are just generally trainings, so that being said, it might apply to a different board. Say you were on Parks Board next year, you know, so it's good to know all these things. The other time you would have to abstain would be if you cannot be fair and impartial. And that's kind of the judicial jury standard, but it's really not going to come into play too often. I've seen it maybe once, and I've been a city attorney for 20 years. This is getting in the weeds with, you know, compatible employment. Like I said, if you have a private interest that comes into conflict with a city agency, contact me, contact staff. We'll get to the bottom of it, help you sort it out so that you stay on the right side of the law and don't get in trouble. That's what we're here for. All right, let's move on to public records. regarding public records, basically, it's going to be anything that was made or received to transact public business. So if I write my name and give it to Alex, just to give her to Mr. Stadelman, my name, business card. Just giving you my name, transitory information, not public record. But if I give you like a list of things we're going to talk about tonight, that's going to be public record. If I send you an email about it, public record. If I send you a text about it, public record. You write about it on a social media forum, public record. So you have an obligation in your role to maintain those, and you shouldn't be destroying those. Questions?
Questions for
When
anybody
in
on the board?
doubt, it's public
Okay,
record.
Okay, so like when we take home our minutes here,
Yeah, those. If everybody's got copies of them and they're not written on or changed, no,
Yeah.
no.
okay,
You're not the keeper of the record.
right,
So in those instances, you're not the keeper of the record.
okay, thank you.
But if you write an email about it, public record. Makes sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So it can include notes taken during the meeting. It won't always, but if it's just transitory thoughts, like I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to ask Alex this later, that wouldn't be really public record. But if I write like a whole big paragraph here, Alex, go look into this, public record. So when in doubt, ask Jen.
There we go.
All right. So sunshine law, kind of parallel with public records, but you shouldn't be talking about board matters outside of a public forum. That's basic. If you want to talk about having dinner, if you want to go golfing, fine. Just don't talk about your voting. Don't talk about what you want on the agenda. Talk about, your weekend plans. It's perfectly fine to do those types of things. You can talk to other, boards, members, council members, for example. But if you're talking about stuff that you're going to be voting on, those are ex parte communications. They could be potentially subject to the sunshine, essentially. So when in doubt, don't talk about it. So generally, the black letter law is that it's only if there's foreseeable action, which may be taken by the board. You guys know what that is. You know what your role is. I laid it out. So if it goes beyond that, fair game. The other thing would be that, and Felicia knows how to handle this, if you all were having, a group session, like everybody was at dinner, a board banquet, things of that nature, those could be potentially sunshine meetings, but as long as we do the right notifications and the right publications, so that there's the three things that have to be had is notice, due process, opportunity to be heard, and the minutes. So the record, the notice, and so the three things, as long as they're met, then we're good. So I have those here somewhere. So ex parte communications, I mentioned briefly. We presume those to be harmful at the beginning of any meeting. When you're having a decision-making meeting, you should always disclose conflicts, ex parte communications, and site visits. So if you go look at something, say you're on the planning board, and you go out and take a look at it, it's called a site visit, and you should be talking about those things. The reason that we have that is because when you act as a board, everybody should have the same information before them when they make a decision. And if Mr. Stadelman has been out to the scene, he might have noticed something that everybody else didn't see. So it's not fair to the rest of the board. It's not fair to the public you're making a decision on behalf of if you don't have all the same information at the same time. Make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Any questions so far for anybody?
So the way we get rid of the presumption is the disclosure. Disclose on the record who, what, where, why, when, how, who'd you talk to, what was about, when was it, and you'll see the boards run through this at the beginning of a meeting real quick, but honestly, it's very important because you're making a record potentially that somebody could appeal later and sue on it. And if you come back later on and you have public records that somebody has found showing, oh, well, you met with the developer on this and you didn't tell us about this, so that potentially a problem later on because you're affecting somebody's legal rights in their property. So written communications not presumed to be as prejudicial, but we have to make them part of the proceeding. So for example, if somebody submits a letter to you to consider something, it can be entered into the record, it can be read into the record. As long as it, gets put in the record, it's not a big deal. Same thing with the site visits and then public comment. You do have the discretion as the chair to limit public comment to relevant matters. It can't be completely out in left field. You may limit it to designated, reasonable, relevant, non-redundant public comment. When it's quasi-judicial, not as much restraint potentially, but you also must always allow those with an opinion against something to express it. You can't shut them down just because you don't like what they're saying. So, board decision-making, and this is pretty important. When you are making a recommendation on an item, and this isn't necessarily with respect to your board, when you're making a decision, you're generally going to be limited to the criteria in the code. When the planning board, and not everybody always understands this, the planning board, the planning and zoning board, it's called different things in different jurisdictions, sorry. But when you're affecting somebody's legal right in a property, you're limited to the criteria as written in the code and the law. And when the staff renders an opinion, that's considered expert testimony, and it's generally, what's it called? Prima facie. Substantial competent evidence. And that's a legal term that we use when we review projects and they come through us. So you can't just look at something and say, oh, well, I don't like it, and it's not fair. So when you see some decisions, sometimes you don't always understand why a board makes those decisions, and that's why, because you have to be based on the law and the code of the statute, and they can't just use outside interest or fairness. So I don't know, I just thought that might be helpful information. So, and like I mentioned, the three things, the due process is what's important. Notice, opportunity to be heard, and then a record kept. So, not really going to hit quasi-judicial too much. Quasi-legislative. So generally, a policy-making body or a policy recommendation is not going to generally have the cross-examine of witnesses and things of that nature. So anytime you have questions about this kind of things, there's guidance found on the ethics website. You can just skip through all that. So thank you. So just hitting some hot topics. The main things I want to convey to you is obviously don't accept gifts. We know that. Don't try to extort money from somebody. These are just normal things we don't do. But I'm just going to read this kind of silly thing. Just because you're on a board doesn't mean you're entitled to gifts, doesn't mean you can steal, doesn't mean your kids should get jobs, doesn't mean you can bully your friends, and it doesn't make you an expert. So that's one thing to hit. So just because you're on a natural resources board doesn't make you an expert in natural resources. You can only act on behalf of the body when they tell you to. When you come before City Council, you are more than welcome to speak as Ms. Ware or Mr. Clifford, but you should only be talking on behalf of the Natural Resources Board if the Natural Resources Board told you to, because somebody might perceive things differently. People have different expectations, and when City Council looks at something, we have the minutes to see what happened. I've had board members in other places come before City Council and say, well, this is why we, whatever. And it's not appropriate. You act as a body, and that's what's important to convey to the body that appointed you. So the other things, just because you're on a board doesn't let you have secret meetings with your friends. That's the sunshine, and doesn't mean you can hide your business. So your texts, your emails, your social media. And those are the hot topics. That's really about all I had. But I'm open to questions and
Is there any questions? Donna, Ms. Ware, go ahead.
Okay, so we got into
did you sit in
some,
the front or the back?
yeah. We, as a board, have gotten into some discussions at several meetings where we're not clear about how the Sunshine Law pertains to us when we were trying to develop this litter quitter, which part of that program means we're trying to get local restaurants to stop using single-use plastics, which means we have to go in and talk to the people that run those restaurants.
Right.
And we were very confused about what, as a board, this is one of our major things that we wanted accomplished, but we were kind of shut down because we didn't know how we could go about that with the Sunshine Law.
Right. Well, if board members are going out at the direction of the board to accomplish your mission, as long as you're not meeting together to discuss board business, that's fine. If you're going to talk to other people in the community, you're not having a meeting. Excuse me. So, if you, like I said, if you happen to show up at the same place, in the same restaurant, you know, and you can also potentially be designated a subcommittee. And as a subcommittee, you could accomplish those missions.
So it mostly sounds like as long as we're not meeting together, we could go out to the businesses. We just have to pay attention when what we're talking about. We can talk about what we're there for, but we just can't talk about much of anything else that's going to be on the agenda,
Well,
really.
you shouldn't be talking to somebody about like what they might want to see or other visions for the board. But you could, you know, if the board decides collectively that that's something you wish your members to do, just like anybody in the community could do it. You know, you could say, we want this, we recommend it, you know, please consider it. I mean, it's no different than me. And I'm not even a city resident, but I could still go talk to people about that.
Excellent. Does that answer your question, Ms. Ware?
Yes,
Great.
thank you.
Fantastic.
Charles, I have a thing I want.
Ms. Billman?
In regards to that, if we're going, I think if I understood you correctly, we're not able to ask them for their recommendations for things that.
Well, I mean, you shouldn't
they
be
would-
soliciting, like, if they want to come talk to you and give their input, it should be here, right? I mean, that's why we have public input.
Well, I guess in my head, I was thinking not that I've
But
done
that's
this, but.
fine, you just have to, if it comes up later for a board vote, then it may be an ex parte communication.
But say, for example, I went to a restaurant and I was talking about what we're trying to do, and then they say, well, we don't want to do that, we want to do this. So we would be what do we
Yeah,
do
but
with
there's
that
only one,
information?
you're one person though, there's not two.
Oh, I see what
Two
you're saying.
people to have a meeting.
Okay.
two of us.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood.
It's just mostly referring to when you're around political figures.
Right, and it only
Any.
applies to y'all, so
Right.
two of you, not one of you and one planning board member,
Right,
not one of you, one city council member,
just
Two.
us.
to natural resource
I
board.
rarely see any of you guys outside of here, so we're pretty good. We've been really good. I've been doing this for going on 7, 8 years and haven't gotten so much as a pink slip. So we've been really, really good about that.
Okay, all right, well then that's all I have for you, and I hope I answered the questions that you've had.
Any other additional questions from the board? Not seeing any. Ms. Colcraft, thank you very much for everything that you've done for us. And I can see you're very skilled at your craft, and I look forward to working with you in the
Thank you.
future. And thank you for choosing Sebastian to spend your career.
Thank you.
I did think of one other thing.
Go right ahead.
You were in the
This
front
has
row,
nothing to
aren't you?
do with what we were talking about, but at the last meeting, I had brought in some materials that I had given to Felicia and asked her to talk about copyright. Is that something that
I
you're
didn't hear the last part.
it talks about the materials that are educational materials that I found on a website from the University of Florida that pertain to sustainability, that we would like to be able to use that same material as outreach material to our people in Sebastian, schools mostly, but, the general public. And I was wondering about the copyright laws, because reaching out to different people within this who have prepared this information, I haven't been able to get anywhere with whether or not we can use this material if we give them credit for
Those
it.
are complicated issues, potentially. It's probably fair use, but that's why we have staff and we'll sort it out.
But you're the person, the staff.
Well, it'll come through staff to me.
Yes. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay,
All right.
not seeing any. Again, thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. My pleasure, and have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item B, calendar of events for the Natural Resource Board schedule of events. Ms. Gordian.
All right, so here you have in front of you the first draft of a calendar of events for the Natural Resources Board. This is actually at the suggestion of Mr. Matthew Kraus. And thank you for bringing this up, because I really like the idea and I decided that it was something that I needed to pursue. And the idea is to give you all a rundown of all the events that we're foreseeing throughout each year. And of course, this would be a living document, so this would be updated throughout the year, but then this would be something that I would consistently give to you if there was a new event that arose that the NRB needed to participate in or had some sort of involvement in. Then this would help you guys keep tabs on what's happening and when those dates are, and it's in a format that hopefully is easy enough to understand, and that if you had any, if we needed to make any adjustments, it's easy enough to make those
Looks
moves.
great. Gave me some good information already on where I'm supposed to be. Does anybody have any questions on the scheduled calendar of events? Anybody want to add anything? Do we have to accept it?
Not, I mean that in a negative way, but required to accept it.
Are we required to accept it as presented? Do we have to do anything else?
You can make a motion if you like.
I make a motion to accept the Natural Resource Board schedule of events as presented by city staff.
I second.
Got a second? Can we get a yes, aye vote for that?
Aye.
Is there any nays? Okay, we'll take it as is. Very much. Thank you for your good work. Any additional questions on the schedule of events? Alrighty, not seeing any. We'll move on to item 9, unfinished business. And number 9, item A, the Sustainable Sebastian Initiative and the champions reports and things we need to do. Ms. Gordian, do you want to lead us off? I know I'm first up on there, but if you want to.
Thank you, Charles. So I guess to start off, with the reduction of single-use plastics, we had conversations, myself, Charles Stadelman, and Alex Bernard, regarding how we are intending to move forward with single-use plastics. And one of our next moves is to look into the business tax receipt application and see about having a question on there about life cycle analyses that the businesses might be using. So the wording we'll have to play around with as far as the actual question itself. And I believe I know who I need to talk to in the building department, but I, of course, need to verify that and see how we would amend the application itself. But it should be otherwise a fairly straightforward process. But if any of you have any questions regarding that, I'd be happy to entertain them.
What she was saying is that we've had a few meetings since our last board meeting. I had to talk to city managers, scheduled meetings with the city attorney, get everything. The first thing we did was on your motion of adding to the life cycle analysis. Basically, from here on out, people who start a business here will have to just look at doing a life cycle analysis based on circularity of their business, taking into consideration the PESTEL framework and including the ISO 14000 guidelines. It's really easy to look at. but it's not here, and it's like teaching people how to breathe. Basically, it's the first step, and we're going to take it from Sebastian. We're going to go to Indian River County with it. From there, we go to the state of Florida. So that's the idea behind that. So that's going real good. That's something that's going to outlast all of us here. So it'll affect every single business from here on out. And if done correctly, the city will also look at our vendors that are doing ISO life cycle analysis, and those vendors will hopefully deal with their vendors. It works like that. I got a little bit of work here to do. Based on the meetings and things that we've talked about, I need to do a few motions to get some of the things done that we need. The first thing I'd like to work on is a motion to actually go ahead and ban the plastic bags. I'd like to do a single-use plastic bag ban based on what's already out there. What I can find is that the single-use plastic bans would save Sebastian almost 7 million fewer plastic bags per year. That's based on 26,000 people in Sebastian. And if laid out, those bags would stretch almost 1,300 miles. It would eliminate almost 40,000 gallons of oil needed to produce the bags. And it would cut single bag plastic litter by at least 33%. That's based on a lot of different reports, and the outline and guidelines are here. But I'd like to get a motion
Charles?
for a plastic ban. I got several motions to go through. The first one is for the
Charles,
plastic ban.
sorry.
Or I
so-
got to word that differently.
From what staff understands about the ruling related to single-use plastics and bans related to single-use plastics, it seems that we're preempted by the state. And I know you had mentioned that in one of your previous emails that you had sent me. But it doesn't seem like there may be a viability to the idea of doing a single-use plastics ban. And so I'm not sure if the motion itself that you would like to cast would be viable, because of the fact that if the state dictates that the municipalities can't pass single-use plastic bans, we end up getting stopped by the state, before we even get started.
I appreciate your input on that. My research has found that that particular bill has failed in committee. So I'm seeing positive action on the Hill here in Florida for plastic bag ban. That particular bill has failed in committee miserably. If we're going to do this, we need to do this now, because they're going to have to reorganize. There may be a new election. All those people may be gone by that time. But this is one way we can help protect Sebastian, because that's all we can do here. We can only talk about Sebastian. That ban has died in committee, as well as I'd like the city council to actually decide. I'd like the motion to be made to let the city council and our lawyer that was just here to come up with the ban based on what 30 other cities in Florida have already done. It's not just us, so we're not doing this alone. I also have examples of the ban directly from Palm Beach County and from the city of Hollywood. So I'd like to base it on those two things. But it's not us having to come up with the wording. One of the things that we were concerned about before I had these meetings with city attorney scheduled with city manager is we don't make policy. We move policy. We have the opportunity now to make a real difference. We can ask the city council to please help City of Sebastian protect itself by not allowing these bags and single-use plastics to be used. The other reason I'm asking for the motion to ask the city council for the single-use plastic ban is I've noticed in our efforts, we can't come up with the business plan for the businesses. We can't come up with the spoons. We can't come up with the plates. We don't know what's going to create value for them, but we can give them guidance on what we expect as a city and what we don't want here. What we don't want is the plastics to be in our waterways. We don't want the plastics to be, I don't want to pick up 700 pounds of plastic every year I go out there. It's just it. So what I would like is a motion for city staff to present to city council a single-use plastic bag ban. I've got a couple other motions along with this. If I can get a
Charles, can
motion
I
for that.
ask you a
Yes,
couple
sir.
of questions? The cities that you looked at, did they pass those ordinances?
Yes, sir. All of them were passed. Most of them have been challenged as well, but until they pass the law up at the state, they're all going to stand. It's not a matter of, it's just a matter of policy. We don't make policies. We just, here's the ordinance for Palm Beach. If you'd like to look at that, that's in
And
effect
this
right
is in,
now.
this is in effect now?
That's in effect right now. This is the ordinance.
And
for
it hasn't
Coral
been challenged?
Gables. It's just fully established. Yes, sir. And this is the ordinance for Coral Gables, if you'd like to look at that. And that's just one of many cities. There's actually over 500 municipalities across the country who've already enacted some type of plastic ban. But it is showing to be very effective. It's gonna eliminate tons and tons of plastic use. But the biggest thing is that until something is needed to be done, nobody's going to do anything. Necessity is the mother of invention. So until these businesses have to do something, they're not going to come up with the next thing. We can't come up with what spoon they need to use or what bag they need to use. But I can come up with something, or the city council can come up with something as a plastic ban. Ban does work. Based on many different studies I've looked at from New Jersey, Vermont, Philadelphia, Portland, Oregon, Santa Barbara, California. If you add them up, the plastic bag consumption has been cut by about 6 billion bags per year. And adopting a ban on single-use plastics that's similar to these would roughly eliminate about 300 single-use plastic bags per person per year on average. So we have over 20,000 people here just in Sebastian. From here, we go to the county and then to the state, and we do what we can. But I am asking for a motion for the first thing for a for a plastic ban. Then I'm going to ask for a motion for something else just after that, but I'd like to do one thing at a time if I could. Are there any additional questions?
Charles, this is specifically for bags, not like cutlery or.
Correct.
But what
Yeah.
about straws and stuff like that?
Well, that's going to be on the next motion.
Okay.
Because what's happening is that the opposition is able to just take one thing at a time and really beat us down. So what I've decided to do is to break it up a little bit so that we can have a combined arms effect, and we can attack it from different sides and take it down that way. And the logistics is everything, and our logistics are here. The objective is clear, and there isn't anything standing between us and the objective, except the motion of yes.
And what are the alternatives to the plastic bag issue?
The biggest alternative is bringing your own bags, not using bags to start with. They go with, from there, they tried to use a thicker plastic bag, but that turned out to be not a great alternative. And that's something that we don't really have to decide us. That's going to be decided by our staff. And as we go through, we're going to help decide that. Obviously, they'll probably come back to us, but we don't have to write this legislation. We just want to say that we pretty sure that Sebastian doesn't want plastic garbage bag pollution anymore. And this is the first step in that. And if any additional questions?
So I guess I want to follow up with the staff just to make sure I understand their perspective. So did I hear this correct, that you folks feel that we will run into some issues in terms of administration and in terms of jurisdiction if we pass this pass a ban. Is that accurate, or is that correct? Yeah, okay. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I hate to put you on the spot, but I needed to do that. So Charles, let me just take a moment to give you my perspective, okay? I actually do come from Vermont, and the culture in Vermont in terms of environmental activities is a world apart about what's happening in Florida. If you name any environmental activity, you will have generally a groundswell of folks who will support it, and not only support it in terms of verbal, they will take the next step, which is they will buy reusable bags. They will not use bags. They will support legislation, universal legislation on plastic bags and virtually everything else. I mean that honestly.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah, but that's slightly different than what we have in Florida. And I'm not sure that the universality of getting rid of plastic bags is anywhere near where it is in some of these other municipalities and states. And so I'm uncomfortable. I mean, one of the first things I found when I got to Sebastian, I went down to Walmart and I was floored. They had plastic bags, literally. There were tons of them. Take them and this and that. But they also recommend reusable bags, and so they have alternatives, etc. And I'm not sure that we would be able to get the same level of support in a community like Sebastian. I don't know that. And certainly in Florida that we get in Vermont or had in Vermont. So I'm a little more reluctant to support a ban and run into a situation down the line where, you know, our municipality tells us, no, they don't want to do that. And so those are my opinions. And
Okay.
Okay.
Well, hold on one second. Let me let me answer
Sure,
that question real quick, and I'll
absolutely.
get right back to you, Ms. Ware. I appreciate your concern, being from Vermont and having that type of background. I lived in Vermont myself. I was in Manchester. I worked on Abraham Lincoln's Hildene, finishing
Yes.
out my apprenticeship there.
Yeah.
I was there for quite a while and understand that. What I'd like you to consider is to give the people of Sebastian a chance to be as good as those people in Vermont. You know, don't discount the people of Sebastian up front without first giving them the opportunity to step up to the plate. One of the things Florida is we're a young state. A lot of people come here from other places. So if you can, when we go through this motion, think about giving Sebastian the benefit of the doubt that we can step up to the plate. We can be as good or better than anybody else at getting rid of this plastic pollution and doing it any way we can. That's really where this is coming from. So if you could give us a chance on that, but I greatly appreciate that. Ms. Ware?
Okay, so I just think that the way you're wording this is very confrontational for the board, for the city council to have to deal with this. I think that maybe what we could talk about maybe doing is recommending that they, as the city council, recommend that people use reusable bags and not use plastic bags, which we try to do all the time with everything that we do in the public's eye. And is all over our website, and I think the public has to be educated before you can lay down a law that these people are going to throw their arms up. And you know, I don't really think that the city council is going to be behind something so strong as banning the bags. I think they can go as far as maybe recommending that, especially the bigger stores that are around here that are using the plastic bags, they could definitely give them some kind of incentive to not use the plastic bags. I think positivity works a lot better than regulations do. And then you have to look at the other side of it. Once you put a ban into effect, then you have to look at, well, who's going to follow up with that? Who's going to go around to all these places and fine them? You know, if you look at what you just handed me, the fines are $50 for using a plastic bag. Well, I mean, I just can't see the people in this community accepting that. They're all going to go running away with their hands over their head saying, forget this, I can't do this, I'm going to move somewhere else. I mean, I think education is the way to go. I don't think that, again, I understand where you're coming from, and I really, we all agree with what you want to do, but I don't think we agree with the way you want to do it.
Okay.
So,
Oh, wait, hold on a second.
yeah,
Let me
yeah, yeah.
address that
Yes,
one at a time.
sure.
Okay. Based on what you're saying is that we all agree that we want to do this. This is the only way to do it, is to make the motion and do it. I know it's gonna get, it may not get any blowback. I personally have not found any resistance. Every level of government that I've gone to, that I've spoken, that you actually made the motion for me to go to, has not given me one thing of resistance. They've told me, this is why I'm here with all this. This is how they told me to do this. So when I see the objective, this is our chance, this is our time. There is going to be no other time. We may get voted out. There may end up being a law saying that we may not get this chance again. But right now, in front of you, Ms. Ware, is the opportunity to ban plastic bags. It's just up to you from here on out to say if you had the opportunity to do it, to recommend it. You're not actually doing it. You're recommending to the city council, just like you said, in easy language, if they would recommend, they would vote on a plastic ban. We're asking the city council for them to consider it now. They can't do anything on it. But this is your opportunity to make that difference. So we're all not going to be here forever. This is it. So this is the first part of where we're at right now. Any additional comment on that, Ms. Ware?
Charles, I'd like to add to that too. It's like, you do have to start somewhere, first of all. And I am in total agreement with a ban, but I think that when you look at it, it's going to be up to the businesses to provide that alternatives, because places where I've lived before where they don't allow plastic bags, it's like, do you want to buy a paper bag? Are you going to bring your own bag, or are you going to carry it out? So then the stores have to be given that sort of space where they have to make the determinations, well, if we're not going to allow plastic bags here, we have to have an alternative for our customers. And then it'll be up to the residents of Sebastian to decide, we're going to carry our own bags, we're going to buy like 10 cents for a paper bag, or we're going to carry it out in our arms. And that's kind of how it goes. It's not like you can't tell the people, well, you can't have bags, because where do they get the bags? From the stores. So to me, that's kind of the way it needs to go. So I don't know how you get to the point where we make a recommendation, or we say that Home Depot or even restaurants, that they're not allowed to use plastic bags. So they're the ones that are supplying the plastic bags. You see what I'm saying? So that's another way to look at it.
Well, absolutely, and I thoroughly agree with what you just said. But you have to also remember, they've had 20, 30 years to come up with something different. We just had a comment on the board. You walked into one of the largest stores here, and there was plastic bags everywhere, but they did make an effort to do something else. But this is an opportunity for you to go at the heart of the matter. Necessity is the mother of invention. We'll let the companies come up with something, let them invent it different. That's not our job. Our
Right,
job is
but
to
what I'm
protect
saying, though,
Sebastian.
it's like, it's not, the people of Sebastian are like making these bags appear. The bags are coming from businesses.
Right.
And so that's, I don't know how we go about going to the point of saying like Walmart cannot have plastic bags here any longer. So they have to come up with an alternative.
Perfect. You just did it. That's exactly what's going to happen. And it's not going to happen tomorrow. This isn't set up. And again, we don't have to come up with this wording. It's not up to us. We have a full city staff with a great city attorney that's going to come up with something just like Palm Beach did, just like Coral Gables did, just like Hollywood did, just like 500 other municipalities have. It's just one of many different strategies that we're going to go over tonight to try to protect Sebastian against plastics and single-use plastics. But this is shown to work. I have many studies that show it to work. It's one of the few things that we can actually do something about, because again, we don't make the rules. We can only advise.
So, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead, sir.
This is my second time in talking on this subject, so I'm going to make this shorter, and then I'm going to let the vote go forward however it does. I see things slightly differently. I could see where a campaign where somebody says, the Natural Resources Board of Sebastian is contemplating not having plastic bags in this community or alternatives for the plastic bags.
Right?
As a citizen of this community, how do you feel about it? And then you're going to the people and saying, hey, we're thinking about this. What do you think? All right? Instead of saying, we've made a decision, we're going to get rid of them. I mean, I can see people at a restaurant who are just had a meal, and they're getting the remainder of the meal, and somebody saying, here's a,
Put out
here's
your hand.
yeah, here's a paper bag. It's going to cost you 15 cents. And it's going to leak all over the place. And you're going to say, well, how come I can't have a plastic bag? And they're going to point and say, well, go talk to the Natural Resources Board. They got rid of them. It's a tougher way to get where you want to get. And I really would like to make it a campaign or public interest, or, let's find out what people, I think you're right. There are good people in Sebastian, and they may decide to say, I'm for it. Let's go. That's different than as a board saying, we've made the decision, and that's how it's going to be.
I understand your
Charles?
concern. Hold on one second.
Sorry.
I'm gonna, hold on.
I just wanted to respond to
Well,
Matt
hold on
real
one second. I'm
quick.
going to call the order because I'm going to answer this. We've been working on this for 5 years now. My initiative is to support the overall reduction of single-use plastics by the city and its business community. That is our mandate. And we've been actually working on this for 5 years. And we have been asking the community at every Earth Day event, at every event we've been going to. And again, I have not heard one single person with resistance against this at all. And you may have just seen it, but we've been campaigning on this for 5 years now. This is ongoing. Ms. Gordian, go right ahead.
Well, to Mr. Krause's point, I think both of us think that having a survey that we can go to the public with and directly asking them these questions about the elimination of single-use plastics, whether it's bags or other single-use plastic items, actually getting that data from the community might be our best way forward, because we don't actually know, we can say, oh, we get input from people at Earth Day, but that's a really small sample size of the community. We don't see all 26,000 people that live within the city, and even if we do put out a survey, we'll get, hopefully relatively decent percentage of that. It wouldn't be everybody, but when it comes to surveys, you can only ask for so much, but at least we would have a better chance than just assuming that the community is behind us on this. Because if we take that assumption and run with it and then meet with resistance later, that would possibly pose problems. And then, you don't know what they would say about the Natural Resources Board or, the staff or whatever at that point. But maybe that data will help bolster whatever programs that Sustainable Sebastian can offer moving forward.
I thoroughly agree with what you said, and if everybody here remembers how we did the integrated pest management program, what we did there was we addressed the spraying, the bug spraying of in the parks, recreation, stormwater, and in the city limits for city. We addressed the herbicide spraying. We did that through a motion on this board. We did not figure that out here on this board. We did it as a motion to ask the city council to figure it out. City council came up with the idea of doing the workshops. So all I'm asking is to let city council do their job, to let the city staff do their job. If you want plastics to stop, this is where it starts. Everything that you've said is correct. We're fighting big oil here. But if everybody remembers how we did integrated pest management, it took us 3 years to actually come up, 44,000 volunteer hours to actually finally come up with the plan. That's what's going to happen here. City council is going to develop their own plan for this ban. We're not going to word it. They're going to come up with how they want to do it. If they want to do it through a meeting by motion or they want to do it through workshop, that's up to city council. But we're recommending the city council to come up with a way to ban plastic bags. And I'm going to work on the other issues everybody else said, but it's one thing at a time because we're having to fight on several different fronts. So I'm trying to give us some fighting room here. And that's really where I'm coming at. We don't have to figure this out. Remember what we did with the spraying? And that was a lot worse than this. Who knew anything about herbicides and pesticides? But again, we're fighting the oil companies there too as well. But look what we did. We came up with something spectacular. It's being used in municipalities across the United States right now. That was a really, really great program. And this is the same thing. It's going to be done the same way. But give City Council the chance to set up the workshops. Give City Council the chance to motion it out, yes or no. If you feel that Sebastian could benefit, regardless of how you think it's going to get done, or if people are going to reject it or not, if you think City of Sebastian in the future could benefit from a plastic bag ban, then I'm asking for yes on the motion. And if not, we'll vote no, and we'll go through the next 4 items I have here.
One of the problems I have, Charles, is that we just don't look at the impacts that are associated with an all-out ban. You didn't look at what are the alternatives to an all-out ban. And I hate to say, but when we come from New York, these are the things we have to do on every single action a municipality makes. We have to look at the environmental assessment form required by the state of New York, and we have to be in compliance before we say something will not have an impact. We haven't done any of that.
Well, that's not up to us. That is actually
I understand
up
it
to,
may not be up to us, but you're sending the city council, and I can't
Right.
see how they're even going to hear this.
Well, we don't know that. And I've been thoroughly instructed by every level of government that I've gone to that this is how well it has to be done. If they reject it, then let them reject it. At least you've done your job. You can go to bed tonight saying you did your best.
See, I'm saying we haven't done our job because we haven't looked at alternatives, and we haven't looked at the fiscal impact upon the local economy and on the residents of the city of Sebastian.
Well, we don't make policy, is why we only move it, and we're going to let city council. I actually have a lot of that different information, but if we want to spend the whole time going through opinions, we can. But I'm not doing that because I've been thoroughly instructed that to let city council set the policy. If it's a policy on what you just said needs to be looked at fiscally, then they can do that in workshop. If they feel that that's what needs to be done, they may feel that it's a no-go. But I feel that everybody on this board wants to get rid of plastic bags. The only way we're going to do that is to make a motion to get rid of plastic bags. It's not going to happen any other way. And believe me, we got some other stuff here we're going to make motions on too that has to do with plastics and things that that work on that too. But this is what we do. We ask the city council to please get rid of these plastic bags in the city of Sebastian. We'll be glad to work with you on alternatives, financial responsibilities, just like we did with the integrated pest management. It took us, like I said, 2.5, 3 years to do it. You worked.
I was
that.
on the committee,
Yep.
yes.
And it was hard. We had groups of people out there. There was people taking my picture with their camera in my face, screaming at me about pesticide spraying, herbicide spraying. It was insane. It was insanity. The whole place was filled up with people, but we still worked through it, and we worked through it with honor, and we came out with a really good package that's being used at this very moment. And
But like I said, during those meetings, we looked at every segment of what we were trying to do.
That was
We looked
also-
at pros, we looked
sorry.
at cons, we thrashed them all out. Some impacts we couldn't avoid, some impacts we could. Those that we could avoid went forward in the plan. Those that we couldn't still had to go forward in the plan because there was no other viable alternative. Now you want us to ignore everything we did for that, in that type of case, and just send this in front of the city council and hope for the best.
It was city council who actually set up those workshops. That wasn't done by the Natural Resource
Right.
Board. So that's what I'm asking for the next step. City council may choose to do those workshops. They may not. They may just do it on motion. I personally don't know because I'm not allowed to talk to. Back in the day, I would have just walked up to the Mayor Dodd. We got a very good relationship, by the way. I could go up to, hey, what do you think about this, bro? Just like you were saying. Don't surprise them with something, but all those days are gone. I have to go through all this process, and I have to do it the hard way. But because of my experience on that integrated pest management experience, I understand what you're saying. The city is going to do a pushback. There may be people mad about it. We are going to have to find out financial issues and ramifications of all this. But that is the city council's job to pick how they want to do that. It is up to us to point them in the right direction, and that's it. We were appointed on a lot of those workshops. You spent hours and hours on those workshops. I did the same thing. I don't know if anybody else was here during that, but when I say it was 4,000 hours, it was insanity. It's going to be the same thing. So I'm not asking you guys to ban it. I'm not asking you to ban it. I'm just asking you to ask the city council to ban it, and they will come up with the plan to do it. That's what I'm asking.
Can I ask you to maybe reword what your motion is saying? Because I don't think you're going to get anywhere with that motion, Charles.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
I think maybe we can reword it to say that as a board, we might, this is a potential motion, it's that we might like the city council to consider the fact that we would like to see an end to the use of single plastics within the city, and we would like to work on helping the city have workshops to educate the public and to come up with a plan of how to instigate it inside the city, because there's got to be steps. You can't just come out with a ban. So therefore, something like, we would like to ask, we would like the city council to consider a workshop on reducing the use of single-use plastics. Maybe we start with a survey. Maybe they start with a survey. Would you come to a workshop? Would you like to put input into this? We could ask Sebastian Daly or one of the other online things to put out a questionnaire. Maybe we start with baby steps. We don't just hit them over the head with 6 different motions. We all want to get there someday, Charles, but I think that we have to give them something they can work with, not just say, this is what we want. This is just not humanly possible for them to work through this. So if we do it in chunks and we say, well, we're willing to put the work in and put in the hours to do the workshops for them or help lead the workshops with them, then maybe they will be able to consider those steps in that way, in an educational manner.
So let me see if I got what you said. You want the city council to consider a plastic bag end and use the end to plastic bags, but you want them to do it through workshops and input from the city.
And surveys.
Well, they're going to do it just like they did the IPM, is what you're really saying.
But I think you need to word it that way. You need to say,
Oh, yeah.
we would like to help the city come to this as a goal. This is our goal. Our goal is to get rid of single-use plastics
And
in
you're actually going to
Sebastian.
see that I got something else coming up, just going to say that, but to get through this, okay, so that you would be happy with this, we were going to ask a motion to consider a plastic ban in the city of Sebastian based on input from the public and through workshops. That's the only way they can do it. They have to do it through workshops if it's input through the public.
And Charles, I think you have to define what plastics you're talking about.
Oh, well, that's
Like the code that you showed me, it
Yep.
was very specific about what plastics they were talking about.
well, see, that's also left up to who's making the law. We don't have to do that. That's the best thing about our job. We don't have to be that. We just want them to get rid of the plastics. Let them decide what they want. Just like we did, we didn't get rid of all the bug spraying. We didn't get rid of everything. We didn't tell everybody in the whole city they couldn't bug spray, only the city employees on parks, and we whittled it all down after 2.5 years. That's what's going to happen here. Give them the opportunity to make the rule.
Charles, you said that you had other motions that you wanted to address. What?
Well,
not
these
to
other
reg-
ones are bombs, just like this one, so
Okay, well,
we're
that's
going
what
to,
I
we're going to
just-
do one at a time.
Well, what I wanted to ask you, are they all related to the single-use
Yes,
plastic?
yeah, they'll all stay within my wheelhouse.
Okay, well, is it possible that we can just say that these are the things that we would like to address to city council as opposed to making 6 different things?
We could have, but
Okay.
I haven't been able to get beyond just plastic bags.
Well, it's going to keep,
So, let
Okay.
me do it, and the reason why I'm
Charles?
doing it one at a time,
Might I add that, I understand that you all are having this discussion right now, but if you have multiple things that you would like for the board and for staff to work on, that we can really only take it baby steps at a time, because as far as, you're like, oh, well, they can decide, but then that comes back to staff, and then staff has to take that time, and
that's correct.
it's, as
just
Lisa,
like
as
we did
Lisa used to
before.
say, 1.5 staff, because I was the one and the director was the half. And so I'm not sure if maybe the bandwidth of what the city staff is capable of doing, and council themselves are only capable of doing so much because they are not full-time city employees. And so that is something that I would really ask you to consider and urge you to consider.
Well,
because
I'm gonna do them all together, but I'm gonna do all these together, but I'm just doing one at a time because the next ones are directly related to single-use plastics, but they're a little bit more intense and a little bit more involved. And one of the things you gotta remember too, a lot of what we're dealing with are issues that are just now coming to light in science. Some of the laws that have been passed were just recently passed in April. We weren't even attending our board. We were doing Earth Day, so a lot of this is moving very fast, and it's new laws being done every day. And we're actually about 40 years behind the plastic ball here. They've been hiding what these chemicals do to us. We all are getting affected by microplastics, and we're picking up 700 pounds of plastic a year just from around our
Okay,
Main Street
Charles, I
program.
have to interrupt you because we've already been discussing this for half an hour, and we're going to do it for all the other ones. I think that maybe we should just bring this to a vote right now, and if how this vote goes, then we'll worry about the next one.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
just-
Excuse me, Mr. Stadelman, whoever is going to make the motion, word it. I don't have wording for the motion, so if you would say what you want put in that motion so that I have it right in the minutes.
Okay, I'm going to make the motion just like you just said. The Natural Resource Board is asking the City Council of Sebastian to consider a ban on plastic bags. In that process, to do it through workshops and public input. And surveys. However, they got to get the public input that they can legally do it. Sometimes they have to do it in workshops. Okay, the Natural Resource Board is asking the City Council to consider the ban on plastic bags with input from the public through workshops and surveys, similar to the IPM. That would be how we're all familiar with it. And that's my motion. Can I get a second on that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. With a voice vote of aye, we can pass this motion. Can I get a voice vote starting with Ms. Billman?
Aye, yes.
Tom?
Aye.
I go with aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
That's a 5-1 passing of asking the city council to ban plastic bags. Thank you very much, with the input from the city, of course. Okay, now on to the second part of this. I greatly appreciate everybody's.
I would like to also to add to this point, we still have a lot more on our agenda, and I think that we should leave the rest of them for the next meeting. You got something to work with. I think you should go forward with this and see how that is received from City Council before we move on to all these other issues. And I know they're important to you, Charles. I appreciate that. But I think that all of us have things that we want to cover too. So we need to get on with our agenda.
I'll agree with you on that one. Part of what I do here is, because there are so many things that have to do with this, it was a recommendation to bring everything at once. And I've already heard it from the board several times to bring everything at once. So I have 4 different things here. I will table it. I would like to put it on the next agenda if I can. They're going to be related to a ban on the PFAS chemicals as related to the new directive from the White House on April 19th. I don't know if everybody's familiar with these directives, but they just came out with that 2 of these PFAS forever chemicals are absolutely carcinogenous. The best thing is that I actually called the water department to see if we're being tested or not. Our water department is testing for PFAS, so that was a good thing.
So we've got PFAS. What are the other ones that you want to get on?
What's that?
What are the other items that you'd like to get on the agenda?
Okay,
next time?
that's the PFAS, and then I would like to I'd like to see if we can establish a plastic waste reduction fund.
Okay.
This would direct revenue.
All right. And then I just want to make a list so that we can get it organized and we can talk about it. So PFAS, plastic waste, what did you say?
Okay, PFAS are the forever chemicals.
I got that.
That's going to be one separate thing.
Yep, I got that.
The
Next
second
one
thing is a plastic waste reduction fund.
reduction fund. Okay, and what's the next one?
That is from a new Superfund ruling from the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, or CERCLA. This is a U.S. government program designed to address hazardous waste contamination that includes plastic.
Okay, so can you tell me that name really quick again?
I'm sorry. The acronym is CERCLA.
CERCLA. Okay.
And
so-
again, this is really brand new. It's a RESIC designation.
Okay.
And so unless you're really up on it.
You said there were 4, so I've
Well,
got.
we just did one. We did the
PFAS,
PFAS
plastic, right.
and established the plastic reduction.
Okay.
That's just those.
I just want to make sure I have it all covered so that way we can be organized
Oh,
for.
then the last one that I want to put on the agenda is to, I want to set up I want to talk about doing a predictive analytic model to take all this information that we're doing and follow it as we
Okay.
go.
All right.
But
Wonderful.
I'll put that on the agenda for next
We'll
time.
get you organized. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And thank you for allowing that plastic bag ban to at least proceed to City Council. All right, moving on through Sustainable Sebastian. That was my part for reduction of single-use plastics for the City of Sebastian. We'll move on to item 2, native landscaping. Ms. Billman, do you have an update for us?
Not really. In fact, I put a call into the nursery yesterday, and they haven't gotten back to me when they're going to meet with us with their estimates and recommendations. So I'll kind of follow up on that before then. So hopefully hopefully we'll get there. And can I ask one other thing? I don't know if this is related to this or not, or how to address this. I kind of have a feeling that Garden Club Park is not an appropriate name for that facility. It's always bugged me. And so I was thinking about it, and maybe we could do something like call it Centennial Park. Just do a name change. Because it's just a suggestion, and I didn't know if there's any input on that.
Is that something we can do?
How do
That
you
would
feel?
be a Parks and Recreation Board discussion, but that would be something that if that's something you're very interested in, that maybe you could bring that before the board.
Well,
I don't know if you would, unless the if the Natural Resources Board had a collective opinion on that matter, then that would be something that perhaps the board would make a recommendation on. But if the board doesn't have an agreement or a consensus on anything, then maybe you as yourself could make that recommendation.
I would encourage you to reach out to Richard Blankenship, the Parks and Recreation Director, and have a conversation about that.
Now, is that something that I can do on my own without having to be
Absolutely.
involved with the
Yes.
sunshine?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So I'll do that.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that all we have, Ms. Billman? Thank you for your help with that. And we'll move on to item 3, tree protection and landscaping ordinances. Mr. Carano.
Okay, I have nothing new, Charles, but Felicia, I would like to meet with you guys sometimes in July.
Okay.
Okay, if we can arrange that, just give me a time and a date. Usually Tuesdays and Thursdays are best for me.
Mornings or afternoons?
I just pick a time.
Okay, you got
Okay,
it.
whatever's best for you. And if we can have as many people who are involved with the process to be there, because I know it starts with the building department and works its way.
Oh, anything else, Mr. Carano?
No, that's it.
Thank you very much for your assistance on that. Moving on to item 4, resource conservation. Our champion, Donna Ware. You're adjusting the results of staff sustainability question. Oh, no, that's Mr. Cross. Apologize, Ms. Ware.
Well, the last meeting, again, I gave you some materials that I thought were important for educational purposes, and I'm just waiting on where we go with that, whether we have to start over or whether we can just utilize the information that was already put together for us.
Right, right. And I'll have that conversation with Jennifer Cockcroft and ensure, I've made a note for myself to make sure that I get in contact with her post this meeting and get her input on whether or not we have copyright issues or any other issues pertaining to that data or that information.
So also, we were talking at the end of last month's meeting about maybe bringing some other city buildings into this.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a process for that within the city, or is that something that the board, our board, has to make recommendations for?
Sorry, one second. So one of the things that I think we might actually touch on when we get to Mr. Krause's information that he shared is the possibility of, yes, looking into other city facilities, including like we have the art center, we have the senior center, we have the community center, and also community development in our own department. We are doing a remodel that we are considering some possible alternatives to the typical systems that we would normally see in the office. So I'd like to pass it over to Mr. Krause to help kind of illuminate on the subject, and I can also share information when we get to each point as to what I've discovered.
Well, I know you have put this thing back up here, and a lot of these things have your initials next to them. So I just wondered if you were going to update on any of these other items that are on here, or are we going to wait for another meeting?
I would have to take a look at which points specifically
Under
that
goal
are left.
13, I mean, this is our 5-year plan, and a lot of these things say they're due August 6th, September 30th under number 4 on the last page there, where my name is as the person that's supposed to be involved in this. You See where I'm talking?
Yes,
Under-
I see what you mean.
Okay, if you open your thing up and it's on the third page at the bottom, all these things are due, and one of them is due August, the other two are due in September, but I'm also the champion here, so I don't know where you are with that. Do you want me to meet with you separately with this?
We can certainly touch base later on that. I think there actually, that this list might need some updating that I have not, as far as like completion dates and whatnot, there's some updating that is needed there, especially when it comes to identifying, other methods that municipalities have used, let's say, that may suit our needs. Both you and Mr. Cross have provided me with information on that. And essentially, we can kind of check that off our list because we have done research on that. You have provided me with information, and so has Mr. Kraus, on possible programs and things that other municipalities can use. So that's something that can be ticked off the list. My apologies if that's not up to date. And you and I can certainly sit down and go over anything that we need to.
Okay, I just want to be, obviously, these things have due dates, and we would like to, I think what we're going to do is sit down in September and put another 5-year plan together. Is that something that we're going to talk about at some point this year?
Yeah, yes.
Because we're at the end of 5 years now, and we want to see.
So the goal is to, in the fall, is to come back with you and say, okay, here we are. Here's what's been accomplished in the past 5 years, and where do we go from here? So, and what hasn't been accomplished, because
Right.
there's things that are still works in progress, right? And so, and to evaluate if we're still on task of where we want to be, or if we need to look in other directions.
Okay, so that each of the champions should be maybe pursuing their own list of things that they might want to put into this plan for the next 5 years?
Right. If you want to start thinking about what the future looks like for the next 5 years, and just start noodling. Not anything formal yet. We'll let you know when we're ready for formality.
Okay.
So, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on to item number 5, green infrastructure and.
Charles, we haven't
apologize.
gone over the portion
Okay,
related to this that
item
Mr. Kraus and I
A
had discussed.
under that is addressing the results of staff sustainability questionnaire, Mr. Matt Cross.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. I appreciate it very much. I've been holding off while you've been chatting, and so I have, just quickly, I'll tell you that I will bring, when the next update is, I'll bring 2 additional types of pollution to the Natural Resources Board. I'll tell you right now, one will be noise pollution, and then the other one will be light pollution. So awesome. I'll give you fair warning of what I'm going to be bringing up. I'm still new to the Natural Resources Board. I'm still feeling my way. I've had an opportunity to chat with Felicia regarding the staff sustainability questionnaire, and as I understood it, in February sometime, you folks had that questionnaire and you went through it. I believe there's been a piece that's been missing from that, and I'll quickly mention it. Normally, when you do a survey and you ask people's opinion, and in this particular survey, it was the employees survey. I think there were 27 employees who participated. Typically, you do a couple things, one of which you get back to the people who you surveyed. You tell them, here are the results. Here's what we gathered, and then things about like, well, here's how we want to go forward, here's some recommendations, etc. So Felicia and I went through the entire survey. There's a couple of things that I'd like to let the Natural Resources Board know that we want to pursue, and the recommendations that employees have are extremely important. They're the people who are the hands-on with the activities, the equipment, the procedures, etc. So asking them is extremely important. Gathering the information of what the survey presented is important. and then getting back to them with the recommendations that you want to pursue that they've offered. So there was three particular. Number one, the biggest one, recommendation that the employees mentioned was waste and the reduction of waste. The second item was energy, the reduction of the energy that the employees use in their tasks. And the third one was fuel consumption. Now, it just so happens those are the three that they gave in that order, the three most important. They also were kind enough to give recommendations about how they thought they could be reduced or modified or changed, et cetera. And sort of, we would like to pursue that with the employees. We would like to say, you've made some recommendations regarding energy. You know, are there AC timers, timers to control the air conditioning? Are there light switches that can be modified or can be included that will reduce the amount of energy that's used? The fuel consumption, they made several recommendations regarding how they thought the fuel could be used more efficiently with the vehicles that the city had. And then the waste, they mentioned or recommended more recycling bins, more recycling in general, working with the Indian River County Solid Waste District in reducing the amount of waste. So we are going to pursue that. We wanted to bring it to your attention this evening so you weren't surprised to find us rummaging through waste receptacles, et cetera. So we're going to take those, we're going to take what the employees have recommended in the order in which they've recommended them and in the priority which they feel would assist in the reduction of those items. So that's what that line means. And hopefully in the next meeting in August, we'll have some additional feedback and additional recommendations from employees, et cetera. That's it. I'll answer any questions if anybody has any. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it. I think you covered it for the most part. I'd just like to say that, you know, as far as what you had mentioned, that we would tackle this one by one. So we would start with waste consumption, do as much as we can, go to energy consumption, do as much as we can, move to fuel consumption. And then if we found that there was something else that came up, you know, we would try to tackle those as we see fit. With energy consumption, I did happen to have a conversation a little while ago about measuring energy consumption with a few other city employees. And it seems that for, say, a facility like City Hall, it would be really difficult to measure one small point of change. So let's say if in the community development department, if we go to make any adjustments to our light fixtures and we add a sensor, so the lights will turn on and off whether or not there's a person present, that may not necessarily be reflected in the quantifying of the bill every month. So between the before bill and the after bill, we may not necessarily see a difference because it would be one small change. But if it was something, say, is like as one of the staff members had recommended in that survey, if there was a sensor like in the AC unit at the community center, that may be more measurable because I think because it's a smaller building and there's a lot less going on, and then, you know, that may be a more measurable difference. So that's just something to something worth noting. But I think that we have some really tangible moves forward that we can make based on his suggestions.
Excellent. Any questions or comments on that from anybody? If you need any assistance on that, I am a credentialed energy rater. That's what I do. And you can put items on each individual piece of equipment to measure their energy consumption, as well as I can measure it from other locations as well. It is possible. It's expensive, but
Thank
I
you.
can definitely help you with that. Any comments or anything like that? And thank you for your work on that, Mr. Kraus. We look forward to your report next month. Moving on to item 5 now, addressing green infrastructure and low impact development. Is Ms. Mosblick online? That's okay. If she's not, we can always come back to that. It's quite all right. Dr. Mosblick, we greatly appreciate everything you do for City of Sebastian. If you can hear us, great. We'll move on to item 6.
Charles, I guess before you do move on, I can kind of fill
Go
in a
ahead.
little bit. From my previous conversations with Nikki, we had talked about the fact that she has kind of wrapped up with all the parks assessments. So we have data on all the parks within the past few months, which is fantastic. We still have to assess the remainder of the tracks, and even some of the tracks still have to be revisited because the last time that I had visited some of those tracks was quite a while ago. So we may need some updated photos and some data on those tracks, but we're ready to move forward with the cut sheets. I think we were going to reassess the layout of the cut sheets that we had previously had to determine if there was any tweaking that's necessary, but then we will go ahead and move forward and have discussions with staff members about any possible management recommendations that will be put into the ultimate green infrastructure plan.
Excellent. Fantastic. It's great to see all the work being done on so many different fronts on this environmental issues. And again, thanks, Dr. Mosblick and everybody else for their help on that. Moving on to item 6, if no more comment on green infrastructure and low impact development, sidewalks and bikeways. Again, back to Matthew Kraus.
All right, so thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm coming to this a little bit late and just about the time that the 5-year plan is up, I'm on it. So I don't know that that's a good thing.
The best
Yeah.
time.
Well, so a couple of things. One, the staff and myself chatted about sidewalks and bikeways. I have a desire to pursue bikeways a lot more than I do sidewalks. The only time I meet the sidewalks is usually when I drive over them, so I'm not sure that that's probably the best subject for me. But anyway, I will start to pursue that and get some additional information and hopefully bring some back to the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Sidewalks and bikeways are tough. They had actually put me on sidewalks and bikeways when we started. That's, I think, how you ended up on it.
Yeah.
You
I
have to
think
deal with
that's
all
how I
kinds of
ended up on it, Charles.
zoning. If you're dealing with concrete, people
Give us
don't
a
want it. Right, exactly. So they give me plastics. Okay, any other discussion on sidewalks and bikeways for Mr. Kraus? Okay, not seeing any. I'd like to thank everybody for their great work on Sustainable Sebastian initiatives. We are coming into the home stretch of a 5-year program. Most everybody has been here since the beginning, and I look forward to seeing everybody here at the end. And thanks. We're really going to start digging into it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do a lot of good work for Sebastian. Okay, moving on to item B, the Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup is coming Saturday, July 27th. Do you want to comment on that, Ms. Gordian?
Thank you. So before the cleanup, we do have the proclamation at the City Council meeting on July 10th. That's at 6 p.m. and that is a Wednesday. I did want to get some feedback from the board if any of you would be available to join in being there present to accept the proclamation from City Council.
I can
Sure.
be there.
Absolutely.
I can't
I-
make it.
We can make it?
I can't.
Okay. We like accepting proclamations.
I can make that
Oh,
too,
excellent.
Thank
Mr. Chairman.
you. And for the actual day of the event itself, I do have feedback from all of you as to when you believe you may be able to attend, and I'll just go over that really quickly. If there's anything that I've missed, you'll see that this is in your agenda packet, but I do have some blanks here. If there was something that I missed or I didn't include, please let me know. But Nikki Mosblick, Matt Kraus, Thomas, and Michael Clifford are available for setup in the morning. Nikki Mosblick and Matt Kraus are available for volunteer check-in from 8 to 9. Sherida, Thomas, and Michael are available from 9:30 to 12:30 for the trash weigh-in and disposal. And then Sherida, Thomas, and Mike are available from 12:30 through whenever we finish wrapping up the event. Is there anybody else who is planning to be there that I have not accounted for, or for something else that I have not accounted for?
I plan on being there.
You are going to be there? Are you going to be participating?
I can be there?
And I didn't hear my name there.
Yeah.
Say nothing. No, I plan on being there the whole day. You know, just
Were you hoping to
I'll be
just
there
help
until I
out in
pass
general,
out.
or were you, I know last year you participated in the cleanup a little bit, so I wasn't sure if I should put you down for.
Well, I go there until my medications kick in. So really, that's the case because I had an issue with one of these events and I got like a heat stroke, and I've been on medication ever since. And I'm there till my medications kick in. So
Well, they stop working, right?
yeah,
they
when
stop
things go
working.
cloudy and I start yelling at everybody, you got to tell me my meds aren't working no more. So yeah, the heat gets to me. But no, I'll get there in the morning and I'll stay there till I can't no more.
Do you need more than, you have 2 people down for event begins, check-in, volunteer check, do you need more people for that?
If you'd like to be there, yeah, for volunteer check-in. I imagine that's going to be more the slow time because I would presume more people would show up earlier, but I would love the assistance if you're willing to offer it.
When do you start checking them in? What time?
Check-in starts at 8 a.m.
Yeah, but you get there like at 7.
Yes, I was planning to get on there at 7 to actually set up the booth, make sure we're there and ready for people when they start rolling in. And then it's not like one of those events where where there's like a hard start time. People seem to come and go, as they please. So there may be people coming and going anytime between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. So we do need at least somebody to be around for check-in as well.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I'd also like to remind everybody, it is Saturday, July 27th, 8 a.m. to 12:30. That's what my flyer here says. But you can do it for a self-reporting cleanup week, starting Saturday, July 20th through Sunday, July 28th. And you register for this self-reporting cleanup week at www.tcw or tcwaterwaycleanup.com. So you don't have to come down to the Main Street boat ramp or take one of the other places. Find you a place that needs to be picked up, pick up the garbage, and report it in if you want to. And it's pretty much that simple. But we look forward to seeing everybody down at the Main Street boat ramp Saturday morning, 8 a.m. to 12:30. Any other comments on Treasure Coast Waterway cleanup?
Just would like to point out that every participant does need to register on the website, and including all of yourselves, please do register so they have a head count of how many people will be helping out, even if you are helping out at the booth.
Yeah, in case you get hurt and get eaten by a shark or something. Okay, the Treasure Coast Cleanup Week, again, is the whole week of July 20th to the 28th. Us being down at Main Street Boat Ramp is July 27th. Look forward to seeing everybody there. Again, it's a volunteer thing, so if you can come, great, and we'll all do what we can. All right, moving on to, let me see, where are we? Treasure Coast City Proclamation, you spoke about that. Board member assignments, we already spoke about that. Okay, we'll move on to item 10, items for next agenda and date. The next agenda date is Tuesday, August 6th, 2024. We'll have our Treasure Coast Waterway cleanup debrief, and we'll talk about Sustainable Sebastian, and I'll bring up the other items at that time, and we'll work on them one at a time. Okay, excellent. If any other comments or questions, anything anybody want to bring up? Not seeing anything. If I can get a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second that motion. If I can get a voice vote of aye,
Aye.
and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.